All right. So today we are taking a deep dive into building a really powerful English vocabulary.
Ooh, exciting.
Right. And we've got some really cool notes and highlights that you sent over from the podcast, Learn English in 10 Steps.
Awesome.
And I've got to say, there's some seriously good stuff in here.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really solid advice there. I mean, it's not just about memorizing a bunch of words, right?
Right.
Like anyone could just crack open a dictionary and start, going down the list. But
yeah, but who wants to do that?
nobody. That sounds terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
This deep dive, I think, is going to reveal some really practical tactics for not just understanding, but actually using a broader range of vocabulary.
Yeah, and that's the key, right? It's not about sounding like a walking dictionary. It's about, having the words that you need when you need them.
Right.
So first things first, why is expanding your vocabulary so important?
Well, this podcast makes a point that really resonated with me. Think of it this way. Every new word that you learn is like adding a new tool to your communication toolbox.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. Yeah.
The toolbox and
the more tools that you have, the more effectively you can express yourself, understand others, and really just navigate the complexities of language.
I like that. So it's not just about quantity then.
Right.
It's also about having the right tools for the job.
Yeah. So the source talks about, the confidence that comes with a strong vocabulary, feeling like you can articulate your thoughts clearly and understand those subtle nuances in conversation. That's empowering.
It's like that feeling when you're finally fluent in a new language.
Absolutely.
Suddenly, like a whole new world opens up.
I completely agree. And so the podcast emphasizes starting with something called high-frequency words.
High-frequency words.
Which are essentially the most common words used in everyday English.
Gotcha.
Focusing on these initially gives you like a solid foundation.
Makes sense.
To build upon.
It's like learning the basic chords on a guitar before you try to tackle a complex solo.
That's a great analogy. Exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking of building, the source suggests a strategy that I think really resonates with how our brains actually learn, focusing on vocabulary relevant to your specific needs and interests.
Okay.
So if you're a chef, for example, mastering culinary terms might be way more useful than, say, learning legal jargon.
Right. Makes total sense.
Right.
Yeah, so tailoring the learning process. I like that.
Keeps things engaging and relevant.
Absolutely. Now, the source mentions flashcards as a classic technique.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on those?
I mean, flashcards can be incredibly effective.
Okay.
Especially when they're used strategically. The key is to avoid simply memorizing definitions in isolation.
Right.
Instead, create flashcards with example sentences or even little sketches to help you understand the word in context and just create like a more vivid memory.
I've always been a visual learner, so adding those extra visual elements makes a huge difference for me.
Totally. And the source even suggests trying out some of those digital flashcard apps like Anki or Quizlet.
Oh, yeah.
They leverage something called spaced repetition.
Okay.
Which is a proven technique for improving long-term retention.
Spaced repetition.
Yes.
Okay, I've heard of that, but tell me more about how it works.
So essentially, spaced repetition involves reviewing information at increasing intervals.
Gotcha.
You might see a new word a few minutes after learning it, then again a few hours later, then the next day, then a few days later, and so on.
Okay.
This spacing effect helps to solidify the word in your long-term memory by challenging your brain to recall it just as it's about to forget.
Oh, so it's like giving your brain a little workout.
Exactly.
Pushing it to remember.
And what's great is these apps do all the scheduling for you.
Oh, nice.
You don't have to keep track of when to review each word.
That takes the guesswork out of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, the source also mentions learning words in context, which I think is key. It's not just about knowing the definition of a word. It's about understanding how it's actually used in the real world.
Absolutely. Think of it this way. You wouldn't just learn the definition of hammer without understanding its function and how to use it properly.
Right.
The same applies to words.
Okay.
Learning them in context through phrases, sentences, real-world examples helps you grasp their nuances and how to wield them effectively.
So instead of just memorizing the word run, you learn phrases like run a business or run for office.
Exactly.
That adds a whole new layer of understanding.
It's about seeing the word in action understanding its different shades of meaning and how it interacts with other words.
Totally. Now, we've talked about flashcards and learning in context, but the source also highlights the importance of consistency.
Yes.
What does that look like in practice?
I think it's about making vocabulary, building a regular habit. So like not just a sporadic effort.
Right.
Even setting a goal of learning just 5 to 10 new words a day
5 to 10 words.
can make a huge difference over time.
That feels achievable, 5 to 10.
Right. It's about those small, consistent steps.
Yes.
Exactly. And the podcast also stresses the importance of reviewing previously learned words to reinforce them in your memory.
It's like tending a garden. You can't just plant the seeds and walk away.
Ooh, I like that.
You've got to water them, weed them, nurture them.
That's a great analogy.
To help them flourish.
And for those who go like a more hands-on approach, the source suggests keeping a vocabulary journal.
Now, that's something I can get behind. I'm a big believer in the power of writing things down to solidify them in my memory. What would you include in a vocabulary journal?
Well, you can jot down new words and definitions, of course, but go beyond that.
Okay.
Write example sentences, draw little illustrations, even create like mnemonic devices or rhymes to help you remember.
I love the idea of making it personal and creative.
Yes.
It turns vocabulary building into a fun, engaging activity rather than a dry academic exercise.
Exactly. And speaking of fun, the podcast also suggests tapping into the world of apps for a little extra boost.
Oh, I'm all about apps.
Yeah.
What are some of their recommendations?
Well, they highlight Duolingo and Memrise
as
great options for interactive game-like learning.
Love those.
They also recommend Word of the Day apps.
Yes.
For a daily dose of vocabulary enrichment.
I love those. It's like a little surprise waiting for you every day.
Right.
A new word to add to your collection.
And they can be great for expanding your vocabulary in a manageable way. Even if you only learn one new word a day, that's 365 new words a year.
Now, that's what I call compounding returns on your vocabulary investment.
I like that. I like that a lot.
So we've talked about a lot of great strategies so far, but I'm curious to hear more about those memory techniques. The source mention, for those tricky words that just won't stick.
Well, one technique they highlight is using mnemonics.
Okay.
These are memory aids that help you associate a new word with something more familiar or memorable.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say you're trying to remember the word loquacious.
Loquacious.
Which means talkative. You could create a mnemonic like Loquacious Larry loves to talk.
Okay.
The alliteration and the image of a chatty Larry can help the word stick in your mind.
That's clever.
Right.
It's like creating a little story or a visual image to help anchor the word in your memory.
Exactly. And another powerful technique is to engage multiple senses.
Okay.
When learning new words, don't just read them silently. Say them out loud, write them down, even try to visualize them.
So it's about creating a multisensory experience to really imprint the word in your mind.
Exactly. Precisely. And speaking of making vocabulary learning more engaging, the source suggests incorporating some fun and games into the mix.
Okay, now we're talking. Games make everything better. What kind of games are they suggesting?
Well, they mention classic word games like Scrabble, crosswords, and Boggle.
Yeah.
But they also encourage exploring the vast world of online word games and puzzles.
Right.
There are so many creative and challenging options out there.
It's like turning vocabulary practice into a brain-boosting adventure. I love that idea.
I do too.
And let's not forget about the joys of reading and watching English movies and TV shows. Not only are they entertaining...
Totally.
But they expose you to new words in context.
Yes.
Making learning feel effortless.
Absolutely. It's like absorbing new vocabulary through osmosis.
Yeah. And the source also suggests joining online communities like language learning forums or Reddit groups.
That's a fantastic way to connect with other language enthusiasts, share tips, ask questions, and even practice your vocabulary in real-world conversations.
Yeah, it's like having a built-in support system for your vocabulary journey.
Exactly.
Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about setting practical goals.
Okay, I like it.
The source provides some excellent examples to get you started.
Right.
I'm all about setting goals. It helps me stay focused and motivated. What kind of goals are they suggesting?
Well, one idea is to set a weekly word challenge.
Weekly word challenge, okay.
Aim to learn 20 new words each week.
Okay.
And then actively try to use them in your writing and conversation.
So it's not just about passively recognizing the words, it's about putting them into practice.
Right.
And making them a part of your active vocabulary.
That's how you really internalize them and make them your own. Another goal could be to embrace a flashcard frenzy.
Ooh, I like the sound of that. Tell me more.
It's simple. Commit to creating and reviewing at least 5 flashcards per day.
Okay.
Consistency is key here.
5 flashcards a day, that feels doable.
Uh-huh.
And it adds up over time, right?
Absolutely, it does.
Right.
And finally, the source suggests establishing a daily reading ritual.
I'm a big reader, so this one definitely appeals to me. What does it involve?
It's all about setting aside some time each day to read a short English article or a few pages of a book. As you read, make a note of any unfamiliar words and take the time to look them up and add them to your vocabulary journal or flashcard deck.
That's a fantastic way to make learning an integral part of your daily routine.
Yeah.
It's like sneaking in a vocabulary workout while you enjoy a good read.
Exactly. And the more you expose yourself to new words and context, the faster your vocabulary will grow.
This has been such a great start to our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
And I'm already feeling inspired to supercharge my vocabulary.
I am too.
But I know we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, there's a lot more to come.
So much more to learn.
Welcome back.
All right, so ready to keep going.
I'm excited to kind of dive into some of the more subtle but still powerful techniques for really building a vocabulary that works for you.
Yeah, like what? Give me some examples.
Well, remember how we talked about learning words in context?
Yeah.
This podcast emphasizes that this goes beyond just books and articles.
Okay.
It's about being really attuned to language in every form. Movies, podcasts, conversations, even social media.
Right.
Every interaction is a chance to pick up new words and observe how they're used.
So it's about making language learning just an ongoing part of life.
Exactly.
Not just something you do in a classroom.
Or with flashcards.
Right, exactly.
And here's a tip that really resonated with me.
Okay, what is it?
Don't just passively absorb these new words. Make a conscious effort to use them in your own speech and writing.
So really put them into practice.
Yes. The more you actively use a word, the more firmly it becomes embedded in your vocabulary.
It's like taking those words out for a spin.
I love that analogy.
Seeing how they handle in different situations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, the podcast also offers a really important reminder. Building a strong vocabulary is a journey, not a race.
I appreciate that reminder.
It takes time, effort, and most importantly, consistency.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed, like I should be memorizing the dictionary overnight.
I know, right?
It's a process.
Language learning is a process.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's like building a house.
Okay.
You lay the foundation, then carefully add each brick, beam, and window until you have a complete structure.
I like that. So speaking of building, we were discussing earlier the podcast's emphasis on this holistic approach to vocabulary.
Right.
And I would love to hear more about what that means in practice.
So it's about moving beyond rote memorization and really engaging with words on multiple levels.
Okay.
Think about etymology, cultural significance, and connections to other words.
Yeah.
The more you understand about a word, the more memorable and meaningful it becomes.
So instead of just knowing the definition, you're creating this richer tapestry of understanding around each word.
That's a great way to put it. Exactly.
Okay.
For example, the source mentions word families.
Word families.
Groups of words that share a common root.
Okay.
Recognizing these patterns can unlock a whole network of reloaded vocabulary.
Yeah, it's like finding the key that unlocks a whole treasure chest.
I like that.
They're new words.
And as you build your vocabulary, don't be afraid to play with language, experiment with synonyms, try out different writing styles. Even dip your toes into the playful world of puns and wordplay.
I love puns.
The more you engage with language creatively,
the
more confident and expressive you'll become.
It's like turning language into a playground.
Yes.
A space for exploration and discovery.
Exactly. And this podcast really stresses the importance of personalizing your approach.
Okay.
There's no one-size-fits-all method for vocabulary building.
So it's about finding the techniques and resources that resonate with your individual learning style.
Precisely. Whether it's flashcards, apps, vocabulary journals, word games, or a combination of approaches. The key is to discover what works best for you and keep refining your methods as you go.
It's like being your own language coach, tailoring your training regimen.
Exactly.
Like your specific needs and goals.
And as you progress on your vocabulary journey, you'll start to appreciate the subtle beauty of nuance.
Nuance. Tell me more about that.
Well, as you encounter more words, you'll begin to notice subtle distinctions. Between words that might have initially seemed interchangeable.
Yeah.
Think about the words happy and joyful.
Happy, joyful.
While both express positive emotions, joyful often carries a deeper, more radiant sense of happiness.
So it's about being able to paint your thoughts and feelings with a finer brush.
Exactly.
Using just the right shade of meaning.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the more expansive your vocabulary, the more precisely you can articulate those subtle shades of emotion and thought.
Totally. Now, the source also touches on the importance of mastering idioms.
Yes.
And colloquialisms. I've always found those to be tricky but fascinating.
They can be tricky because their meaning often goes beyond the literal meaning of the individual words. But mastering them adds a level of fluency and naturalness to your language, especially in casual settings.
It's like unlocking the secret code of informal language.
Exactly. And once you crack that code, you can sprinkle these expressions into your conversations to add a touch of humor, personality, and cultural flair.
Speaking of cultural flair, the source mentions a connection between vocabulary and culture, but doesn't explore it fully. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
That's an important point. Language is deeply intertwined with culture. The words we use reflect our values, beliefs, and history. For example, the English language has absorbed words from countless other languages, each word carrying a little bit of its cultural origins.
It's like each word is a tiny time capsule, holding a fragment of history and cultural meaning.
Precisely. So as you encounter new words, take a moment to consider their etymology, their cultural roots, and the journey they took to become a part of the English language.
It adds a whole new dimension to the learning process. Transforming words from static definition into dynamic stories.
I couldn't agree more. And this brings us to a really important point. Vocabulary building isn't something you just finish. It's a lifelong pursuit, a continuous process of exploration and discovery.
That's exciting, actually.
It is.
It means there's always something new to learn. Always a way to refine and expand my vocabulary.
The English language is constantly evolving, with new words being coined and old words taking on new meanings. So embrace that journey of lifelong learning and enjoy the ride.
I love that. It transforms language learning from a chore into an adventure.
Yes.
Now, I have a question that's been on my mind. We've talked a lot about tailoring vocabulary learning to your interests. But what if I want to explore vocabulary in areas outside of my immediate needs? Like, say I'm a software engineer, but I'm fascinated by ancient history.
That's a fantastic question. I think it's wonderful to delve into vocabulary that sparks your curiosity. Even if it doesn't directly relate to your daily life, learning should be driven by passion and interest.
So if I'm drawn to the language of archaeology or mythology, I should embrace those words and let my curiosity guide my vocabulary expansion.
Absolutely. There's a beautiful synergy between pursuing your passions and expanding your vocabulary. It's like opening a door to a whole new world of words and ideas.
I love that. It's about feeding your intellectual curiosity and letting that drive your language learning.
Precisely. And who knows, maybe those seemingly unrelated vocabulary area will one day intersect with your professional life or personal interests in unexpected and rewarding ways.
It's like planting seeds in a garden. You never know which ones will take root and blossom in the most beautiful and unexpected ways.
That's a lovely analogy. Now, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, there's one more point from this podcast that I think is worth highlighting. It's the idea that vocabulary building is a gift that keeps on giving.
A gift that keeps on giving. I like that.
The benefits of a strong vocabulary extend far beyond simply being able to communicate more effectively. It enriches your understanding of the world, enhances your ability to think critically, and even empowers you to make deeper connections with others.
It's like investing in yourself. A gift that yields dividends for a lifetime.
Exactly. And it's a gift you can share with others. As you expand your vocabulary, you also expand your capacity to connect with people from different backgrounds, cultures, and perspectives.
It's like building bridges of understanding through language.
Precisely. And as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought.
I listen.
Remember that the journey of vocabulary building is best traveled together. Connect with fellow language enthusiasts, share your discoveries, celebrate your victories, and support each other along the way.
I love that. It turns language learning into this collaborative adventure.
Exactly. And now let's prepare for the final legs of our vocabulary journey. In part 3, we'll explore some advanced techniques for mastering specialized vocabulary, those unique lexicons that unlock specific fields of knowledge.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Welcome back to the deep dive. I'm feeling like super invigorated after exploring all these practical strategies for building a, rock solid vocabulary.
It's been quite a journey so far, hasn't it?
It has.
And the best part is we're just getting started.
I'm ready for more. What's on deck for this final leg of our vocabulary voyage?
Well, I think it's time to delve into the fascinating world of specialized vocabulary.
Okay.
Remember, the source material we've been looking at primarily focused on building vocabulary for everyday communication.
Right.
But what if you want to master the language of a specific field?
Okay.
Like medicine, law, or even art history.
Yeah, that's a great point, because those specialized fields, they have their own unique lexicons, almost like secret codes that unlock this deeper understanding.
Exactly. I think this is where the real magic of vocabulary building happens.
Okay.
When you start to see how language shapes knowledge and understanding within specific domains.
It's like learning a whole new language within a language.
It is. It is.
So how do we apply the strategies we've discussed to mastering these more specialized vocabularies?
Well, many of the core principles still apply. Learning in context, using flashcards, engaging multiple senses, creating mnemonics.
Okay.
But we need to adapt our approach
Right.
to the specific challenges of specialized vocabulary.
And you give an example.
Sure. Let's say you're trying to learn medical terminology.
Okay, yeah.
Instead of just memorizing definitions from a glossary, immerse yourself in medical texts, journals, or even podcasts. Pay attention to how those terms are used in real-world medical contexts.
So it's about seeking out authentic sources of information within that specific field. It's like doing field work for your vocabulary.
Exactly. Precisely.
I like that.
And don't be afraid to get hands-on if you're learning legal terminology, for example.
Yeah.
Try reading legal documents, watching courtroom dramas, or even attending a mock trial. The more you immerse yourself in the language of that field, the more natural those terms will start to make sense.
It's like learning a language by living in that linguistic environment.
Yes.
You're surrounded by the sounds, the rhythms, the nuances of that particular vocabulary.
Exactly. And as you encounter these specialized terms, don't just passively accept their definitions. Question them, break them down, analyze their etymology. Often understanding the root of a word can unlock its meaning and make it much easier to remember.
It's like being a word detective, uncovering the clues that reveal the hidden meanings.
Of these specialized terms.
I love that analogy. And here's another tip. Connect with experts in that field. Talk to doctors, lawyers, historians, artists, whoever holds the keys to that specialized vocabulary. Ask them questions, observe how they use those terms, and even learn the slang or informal language that exists within that field.
It's like tapping into a living dictionary. Gaining insights that you wouldn't find in a textbook.
Exactly. And as you build your specialized vocabulary, remember to celebrate your victories along the way. Mastering a complex medical term or understanding a nuanced legal concept, those are achievements worth acknowledging.
It's like leveling up. In a language learning game. Gaining new skills and knowledge that empower you to explore deeper levels of understanding.
Now, before we conclude our deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought. The beauty of language, whether everyday or specialized, lies in its ability to connect us to new ideas, new perspectives, and new worlds of knowledge. It's like language is the key that unlocks the doors to endless possibilities.
That's beautifully said. Exactly. So as you continue on your vocabulary journey, embrace curiosity, be persistent, and never stop exploring the boundless power of words.
This deep dive has been truly inspiring. I'm feeling energized and equipped to tackle any vocabulary challenge.
That's great to hear.
That comes my way.
Remember, it's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
Enjoy the process of learning and discovery, and never underestimate the transformative power of expanding your vocabulary.
And on that note, we wrap up our deep dive into the world of vocabulary building.
We do.
We hope you've enjoyed the journey as much as we have.
Yes. Thank you for joining us.
Until next time, keep those words flowing.